I would like to welcome everyone here to our first virtual High Impact Practices Conference in Higher Education. We're really excited that everyone could join us this morning. This program is being sponsored by our Title V Fostering Pathways to Success grant and also co-sponsored with the Center of Teaching Effectiveness under Dr. Michelle Johnson-Vela, who serves as the current director. So I would like to first of all tell you that I am Dr. Agnes Flores, and I'm the project director for our Title V Fostering Pathways to Success grant. This was a $3 million grant that was awarded from the Department of Education beginning October 1 of 2020. But due to the pandemic, we were unable to come together as we normally do for our conferences that we've done with our grants in the past. And so we're all learning, and we appreciate everyone joining us and working through this with us. I will be the timekeeper for our presenters, and the presenters will have approximately 20 minutes to give their presentation. Then we're going to stop, and Araceli Negrete will be the person who will ask the questions that come into the chat. And then the presenters will have an opportunity then to respond to those questions. However, if we do run out of time, because we've put everyone on a tight schedule, the questions will be sent to the presenters, and they'll have an opportunity through email to get back with anyone who had any questions. With that being said, your speakers and cameras are off, but we do want you to go to the chat room and give the questions, because that helps enhance the program and helps us identify areas that you would like to be addressed and provide more information to. So be sure and join us with that in the chat. So following the conference, we're going to be sending out everyone an email that will have the survey in it, but we'll also send a link. All of the presentations are being pre-recorded. These presentations will then be able to be found online in our Title V website. And so we will give you that link to make sure that you can find them in case you have to come in and out through the day, that you can see the presentations that you've missed. We also have some door prizes. Due to interrupting our presenters, we're not going to do that. So at the end of the day, we will take a list of everyone who has logged in, and we will draw for door prizes. I think we have about 8. And for those on campus, we will be bringing them to your office or contacting you that you did win a door prize. So we look forward to that. And so I just wanted to make a note that we do have 6 presentations from faculty. Some of them are a team presentation, and these were selected through the Center for Teaching Effectiveness, and we're real excited to be able to help our faculty showcase their presentations, their knowledge, and things that they want to share to add to our body of knowledge. So we have a little bit later at noon to come in, Dr. Jennifer Coleman. She's from Western New Mexico University. We're real excited to have her presentation. She will be fully introduced later at noon, so please try to log back on. And then we're real excited to have a student presentation that will start at 4 o'clock. We have Carly Michelle, who is an entrepreneur from Austin, who will be presenting a financial literacy program for our students, but all faculty staff are welcome to join this presentation as well. And with that, Dr. Lou Reinisch should be on. He is our provost for our university. He's the provost and vice president for academic affairs. Hi, Dr. Reinisch, I see you there. With us a short amount of time, about 8 months. His PhD is in physics, and he spent a large part of his career working with lasers used in medicine and surgery. And one of his first publications was used as a high impact practices in teaching upper level physics labs. And with that, Dr. Reinisch, I'll let you tell them any more that you want them to know about you. And we're so excited for you to bring us our welcome.
Thank you very much, Agnes, and welcome everybody. This is going to be an exciting day of high impact practices in higher education. I think it's a conference that we need to have and maybe need to have more often than once a year, maybe once a month. And this goes back to some of my thoughts on teaching. And even though I've been a university professor, I've been, in a department of physics, I have to admit to you, I hate lecturing. I hate standing in front of a blackboard, giving covered in chalk dust, my back to the students, working the same problems over and over and over again. And I reflect on, why is it that we teach this way? Why is it that we think that it's important for us to stand in front of the chalkboard? And that's because most of us teach the way we were taught. These were the same sorts of classes that we attended. But things have changed in universities. At least when you're a dinosaur like me, you know, back in my day, 5% of the students went to college. And now we're approaching 50% of the students going to college. And that whole different group of people that you're trying to educate means that we have to do things differently. We're not teaching the elite anymore. We're teaching a broad spectrum of individuals. And our basic teaching method even goes back, as I said, we all teach the way that we were taught, which means that teaching never changes. And indeed, the way we teach actually goes back to the ancient Greeks. I mean, they used to sit, the boys, it was only the boys, in columns and rows, and have the elders stand in front of them and lecture and hand out all the wisdom that the elder had. And the boys would sit with their tablets and they would write this information down. That idea of lecturing, of orally transmitting the information, has gone on for thousands of years. And, I learned when I was lecturing physics that it just wasn't effective. And students hate physics. It's considered to be one of the hardest subjects on campus. And it's not, but you don't teach it very well when you teach it by lecturing. And since all physicists teach it by lecturing, we create this illusion that we have a hard subject. And through my career, I've experimented with lots of different ways to teach. And there are many things that work much better than lecturing. I've experimented with hybrid classes, and I've put some videos on where I talk about my experiences teaching hybrid classes. I thought it would be trivial to teach an hybrid class, and just totally had a disaster my first time. And then I realized what needed to be done to make it work. And it's now, I think, one of my best ways of teaching. I like teaching with a flipped classroom. I really enjoy having the students work together and solving problems. And in physics, at one time, when I was teaching upper level physics class, I assigned the students to give the lectures. So when they walked into class the first day, the syllabus had on it the names of every student in the class, what the topic was, and what the date was that they were going to deliver that lecture on. And so the class was being delivered totally by the students. And I will say the students at first were rather upset. The first thing they asked was, do we get our tuition back if you're not going to be teaching us? And I explained to them, my thoughts were, when kids got interested in physics, most of them were about 12 years old, and they would read a book about faster than light travel and get excited about it and read another book to understand more. And then they would share those stories with their friends. I said, after you got so excited about physics, when you were 12, 13 years old, by reading about it and talking to others about it, we then put you into college where we've made it drudgery. We've told you just to work problem set after problem set. And physics hasn't become fun. It's become drudgery. I'm going to go back and allow you to learn physics the way that you started out. And being able to do that really excited them. And they learn the material so much better than if I were to standing up in front of the classroom and lecturing to them. And even simple things, changing final exams. I like giving oral final exams. And what I generally try to do is when I'm giving an oral final exam, I tell the student it's going to be a job interview. And we talk about preparing a resume. They come for their oral exam with their resume, with appropriate dress for a job interview. And we sit down, and being a job interview, you're free to ask any questions you want. So you can have a very good oral exam for the individual, and they get that experience of knowing what it's like to interview for a job, knowing how to answer questions, knowing how to sit upright in the chair, and how to pay attention. All of this stuff is being taught to them and giving them so much more. So I really support this conference because you're going to hear all sorts of ideas. You're going to have your mind stretched in different ways to teach. And I encourage you to experiment with those different ways to teach, to try these high impact practices. Many of them have been tried and they're true and they really work. And if we get enough people to do this, if we get enough of these conferences, maybe someday we will stop teaching like the ancient Greeks. Thank you very much. Have a great conference. Agnes, thank you for arranging this. It really is, in my opinion, the right way for us to be going. Thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Michelle Johnson-Vela?
Yes, I'm here. How are you? Okay, I'd like to introduce the first speakers rather. I'm sorry about my screen there. I'm having a little bit of technical difficulty, but I'm going to present to you Ms. Nicole Morris and Dr. Stephanie Bain, who will be doing their presentation, First Time in College Students Engagement in Virtual Learning Environment. And I'd like to tell you just a little bit about each speaker briefly. Nicole Perez Morris has a master's degree, and she's a full-time faculty member with the Art, Communication, and Theater Department here at TAMUC. She teaches speech communication as well as journalism, while serving as the advisor for student media on campus. She holds 2 master's degrees, one in history and politics from TAMUC, and the second in communications from Arizona State University. She's also an award-winning journalist with 25 years experience in the field. Her research interests include first-time in college students, computer-mediated communication, social media communication, and crisis communication. And I should add, she did just win a College of Arts and Sciences award. So that's fantastic. And then we have Dr. Stephanie Bain, who also has very much experience. She has over a decade of experience in education. Her classroom experience includes working in economically disadvantaged schools and specifically focusing on classroom management techniques. Currently, Stephanie is the AVID, which is Advancement via Individual Determination program. She's the liaison, the AVID liaison for TAMUC. She is a published author and is a certified trainer of trainers. Stephanie graduated from Middle Tennessee State University with a bachelor's degree in history, as well as like Nicole, and 2 minors, one in education and the other economics. She also holds a Master's of Science in Curriculum Instruction and Assessment from Walden University, as well as a doctorate in Educational Administration. So welcome and thank you.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you, Dr. Johnson-Vela. We appreciate the opportunity to be here to share our research with you. I know we are on a time crunch, so I think we will just jump right in. Does that sound all right, Stephanie?
I think that's AKA for Nicole telling me, Steph, don't ramble.
No, she and I present fairly often together, and so we kind of have this crazy way that we work. But I think we tend to highlight each other's strengths.
Yes.
Okay, so very good. So as Dr. Johnson-Vela said, we are presenting our research here, First Time in College Students Engagement in Virtual Learning Environments. So this was a study that was conducted last semester on TAMUC, on the TAMUC campus. And I'm trying to advance there we go. So just a quick review. When the coronavirus pandemic struck the United States in spring 2020, colleges and universities quickly had to convert to a virtual education only type of format. And it kind of left some of us instructors scrambling a little bit to make that adjustment. And then when there wasn't much progress made in controlling the virus, fall 2020 started for Timucua students in a mostly virtual only format. So for first time in college students, their introduction to college life was atypical, and it was conducted mostly through their computers or their smartphones or some other form of technology, rather than the traditional face-to-face type of learning. And so their immersion into the college culture and college life was very different than their predecessors. And with virtual learning here now, and probably continuing to some extent, we wanted to gauge the engagement level for first time in college students at this university. And so we conducted a study to do just that. We wanted to measure their level of engagement in 3 different ways: their engagement with their instructors, with their course content, and of course with their peers. We believe that the levels of engagement in these 3 areas can help us predict how well a student will perform in a virtual learning environment. And with that, then levels of engagement increase when instructors use high impact practices. Steph?
So to kind of expand on what Nicole was saying, what is the relevance of this, right? Why is it so important that we're doing this now? And how can this help us in the future? Well, we know that the coronavirus has completely changed education. And so when Nicole came to me and she said, man, you know what, this is something that we should really do. We need to do it now. I was like, let's do this research. So we want this to be able to expand. I want to expand on it, and we'll talk about that later. But we also wanted to give back to our higher ed community. So when we talk about this research, this is just a baseline. And that's what we want to tell y'all, is that this is something that we were able to showcase and to get the survey out. But this is most certainly a baseline that we need to expand on, and we need to encourage other institutions to do this as well. So the findings show that there is an increased need for high impact practice training among faculty. Now, many of you here probably already know that, but this is just additional research to prove, man, you know what, we're doing great, but we got to keep going. And also, students may not be as successful in an online setting. And that is across the board, kindergarten through higher ed. I do know that last year, and I'm just going to use San Antonio ISD because that's public knowledge and public record, that they were only at I think in the fall of last year, they were only reaching about 20% of their students. So that's something to keep in mind for K-12. Okay, so first time in college, what does the literature say? Many students have difficulty transitioning from high school to college. We know that already. So where does that leave us, and where does it leave our students? So in order for the student to be successful, the instructor must first put forth the effort, right? And what does that look like? And that's something we can expand on as well and have a great discussion about, okay? And every student comes to our campus, any campus, with their own unique background.
So what is engagement? So previous research has presented mixed results and levels of course satisfaction as it relates to computer-mediated communication, engagement, and positive learning environments and outcomes in virtual education. There are 3 types of interaction essential in virtual learning, and that's student to content interaction, student to instructor interaction, and then peer-to-peer interaction. So student to content interaction is the connection students make to information in the course materials, of course. Student to instructor refers to the engagement between student and instructor, which includes delivery of information as well as feedback from the instructor. And of course, peer-to-peer interaction is the exchange of information and ideas between students, right? We want students to learn from each other just as much as they learn from us and their content, right? That is key for a classroom setting that has high impact practices, is that collaboration between students. Student engagement is defined as the purposeful time and effort that students invest in their education, but more importantly, it also reduces their sense of isolation in a classroom and then improves on their performance. Engagement in a virtual setting in particular can be illustrated through actions that build community. So we want that engagement between the peers so that they can develop some relationships, true relationships with their peers as well as their instructors. Studies show that there can be a disconnect between subject matter, peers, and instructors in virtual learning settings. And one of the biggest challenges in a virtual learning center setting is a student being able to overcome that feeling of a disconnect. So in our study, we looked at the 3 different types of virtual education classes: asynchronous, synchronous, and a mixture of the two, with or without some face-to-face elements. Regardless of how the delivery is with these virtual classes, they each share a common goal, and that's to ensure that students feel that they are part of the learning process. With the lack of direct peer interaction, virtual learning can hinge more on the instructor, which puts, more pressure on us as teachers. But too often, students struggle in virtual classroom environments that require them to learn on their own and basically teach themselves. And we're going to look at some comments that students made in this survey that kind of point to that. Students do not like to feel that they are simply teaching themselves. They need to have that connection with others and receive feedback from their instructors.
So the methodology and why did we choose TAMUC? Obviously, TAMUC is near and dear to our heart. Nicole and I have both. I still teach freshman seminar. Nicole was our freshman seminar for several years. So we just felt like this is the perfect place to begin, is our freshman students. So a little over 1,000 students were surveyed. And, 946 were actually sent the survey because they were first time in college. And there's, there's a difference when we talk about FTICs, and we really wanted to target those. And we sent it through Starfish, and our UNIV, and individually sent out as well faculty members that taught UNIV. But UNIV was either presented completely online or a blended classroom, so we were able to compare the both. And we sent it through SurveyMonkey. I've always had great experience with SurveyMonkey. Nicole and I were really, really impressed with it, and it would helped us with obviously checking out the data. We thought we had a great turnout. 169 were completed. We had to throw out the others that weren't, or people didn't finish. So we had a strong sample size. Okay, and then we use the Likert scale to measure strongly agree to strongly disagree. So there were 3 components really that this measured after grouping the questions and really pouring through the research. We were searching for, and what came out of the research was student to student, student to content, and student to instructor. And so when you're looking at the level of communication between these, as well as their peers, we want to make sure when you're checking out these results that this is for our first time in college. We are a Hispanic serving institution, and we do meet many, many needs of the rural districts around here. So we're their feeder school. So we feel like this research is even more impactful, especially because it's here in South Texas. this does relate specifically to our campus. So as we continue forward, keep that in mind.
So just a quick look at the demographics of those 169 students who completed the survey. 121 self-identified as female and 48 self-identified as male. So we did have more young ladies complete the survey than young men. The majority self-identified as Hispanic or Latino with 114, and 63 of the 169 self-identified as a first-generation college student. I think that's really important to note. And the majority of the students who completed the survey were taking 5 to 6 online courses in fall of 2020. So we really hit the demographic we were looking for to review this data. So here are some of the results. I think Steph's going to start them off for us here.
Yes, and we're going to start with student to instructor engagement. So this hits home to many of us, right, when we're doing these online environments. Do you feel connected to the course instructor? 32% had a solid agree, 36% were neutral, and 32% were disagree. So I know normally when we're talking about our research, when you see neutral, you're like, oh, that's negative. But what we see is an opportunity. And if you're coming from K-12 and maybe in higher ed, you may hear this term bubble kids. And those are the kids that you haven't been able to reach yet, but you can. So this is a wonderful opportunity for this. Okay, the course instructor responds to questions in a timely manner. Hey, 68% agreed, 23% neutral, and 9% disagree. We thought that was fairly positive. And then your online course instructor encourages engagement between students. Again, 45% agree, 38% neutral, and then 16 is a hard no. They disagree. 17%, excuse me.
Right. In terms of student to student engagement, there were a couple of statements that we used in the survey to gauge that. The first was you feel connected to other students. And this is where we saw some startling results in that 53% of those students surveyed disagreed with that statement and 31% were neutral. Again, you can consider that 31% as an opportunity for us to grow, right, and improve on that statistic. Only 19% agreed. And then the course affords you an opportunity to collaborate with your classmates. Now, this statement probably wasn't worded quite as well as it should have. 40% did agree with that, 26 disagreed. But the reason I say this statement's a little off is that it states that the course gave you the opportunity, but it doesn't say whether or not they did, right, collaborate with their peers. But they did have the opportunity to do so, they felt like.
So the last component was student to content. So what did that look like? And I'm going to go a little faster. That way we can kind of finish this up so we can talk about it and discuss and answer any of your questions. So did you receive instructions on how to navigate Blackboard? 83% agreed. That is amazing. The course syllabus provided detailed information on assignments. Man, 85% agreed. And then you feel connected to the course. 46% agreed that neutral of 37. And I know sometimes we think of that as negative, but if we think about it positive, it's an opportunity. And then 18% disagree. Okay. Online directions are communicated clearly and easy to follow instructions. 55% agreed. And then 31% neutral, and then 14% disagreed. And the expectations for the course were openly communicated. 72% agreed with that. So we found, man, that's looking good. Like for us, this is amazing. And your online course is just a lecture. This is great. Only 31% said that. And then 35% were neutral, and then 30% disagreed. So that's something I was like, man, even in online, when we are trying to present it, only 31 really did say, yeah, it was just a lecture.
Right. So again, more opportunity to expand. So I think rather than seeing that as a negative, I think I also see that as a positive. I think it shows that instructors were quickly trying to pivot and trying to reach students. At the end of the survey, we did have this open-ended optional question. We asked the respondents to share their thoughts on the overall quality of virtual courses at Timuc, and we had 100 of those students offer comments. And here's just a snapshot of that. For the most part, they were very positive. Being a first gen and doing online was pretty difficult to adjust, but my professors and Timuc provided information we students needed to succeed, right? The quality of the courses offered are pretty high. And so there was kind of a mix. One, kind of negative was that sometimes like a lecture wasn't even provided. And so some of the students felt like they were just kind of learning on their own, and that's what we want to avoid. But I think for the most part, the responses were pretty positive in these open-ended questions. So just to sum up, the results showed that the majority of FTICs, 56%, did feel connected to their course instructor. The one negative was that they weren't necessarily feeling that student to student engagement, right? There was kind of more on the negative side rather than the positive. So room to grow, and conferences like this high impact conference can really help us make those connections with students. And then collectively though, almost 64% of students had positive responses in terms of their feelings of communication and connectivity to their content. And that to me is another sign of really strong student to instructor engagement.
So what are the implications of this? We know that first time in college students in virtual classroom at Timuc, right, recognize a close connection with their instructors. It is positive, but it's only just a small portion of what we can do to expand on virtual classrooms. And really, this is the future, right? More and more online opportunities, more hybrid opportunities. So the shortcomings, student to student engagement, and this is something that we can take around from high impact practices, right? And incorporating those into our online environment. And then discussions on how to continue to educate, motivate, and guide faculty. So it is something that we can talk about, and we work together across disciplines and just keep moving forward in this process. So it's a positive thing. We took away from this positive interactions with students, but also something that we can expand on.
So some next steps, we think that conferences like this are important, and I kind of agree with Provost Dr. Rainish when he says that maybe we should do it more than once a year. I know Stephanie does do a lot of professional developments with the CTE and with AVID, and so we think that needs to be continued on. It's clear that instructors are embracing their role as facilitators of learning, right? And not simply just regurgitating information. We do need to encourage more student to student engagement. I do want to point out that while this study kind of was based on virtual learning, if you can create an engaging course in an online setting, you can create an engaging course face-to-face, right? I think it's a little more challenging to do that online. We think there are some multimedia tools that instructors can use to also help increase student-to-student engagement. And again, more workshops aimed at creating curriculum designed for such engagement, peer-to-peer engagement should continue. And we believe that A&M Kingsville is doing a really good job in encouraging that type of participation. And with that, Stephanie, because she does do so many professional developments, we want to leave you with the link to her YouTube page. You can look at that and find some high impact practices that maybe you can put into practice in your own classes or modify. And most of these will actually fit any subject matter. So thank you.
Thank y'all so much.
Araceli, are there any questions for our presenters?
I haven't received any questions, so if anybody would like to type in any questions in the chat box, we would be more than welcome to tell them to the presenters so that they can go ahead and and answer those questions, but I haven't received any questions as of yet.
We have a little bit of time between now and when our next presenter starts. So at